Welcome to the Cleveland Heights University Heights City School District Board of Education work session, that's a mouthful, for the 20th of May, 2025. Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hines.
Here.
Ms. Lewis.
Here.
Ms. Sereni. Mr. Trimble.
Here.
Ms. Crenshaw.
Here.
First, I will entertain a motion to consider the consent agenda.
I motion we consider the consent agenda.
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions?
I'm surprised and delighted to see that looks like Ms. Kirkland is back at Monticello. Is that true?
That is true.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yes.
She was transformative in my daughter's entry into the building, so that's very, very exciting for me on a personal level.
Anything else? This is a lot of end of the school year cleanup, right? Lots and lots. Hearing nothing else, Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. Trimble.
Yes.
Ms. Crenshaw.
Yes. I want to acknowledge a few new administrative hirings and changes that were approved by the board tonight. First, I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Christopher Frank, who will be Roxborough Middle School's new assistant principal. Mr. Frank most recently served for 4 years as a principal in the Sheffield Lake City Schools and as an administrator for a decade prior to that in the Oberlin City Schools and at the eHove Career Center. We look forward to welcoming Mr. Frank to Roxmid and, of course, wishing Assistant Principal Denise Lackey the best after retiring from CHUH after 22 years of service. So welcome, Mr. Frank.
Welcome, Mr. Frank.
Next, as you know, Oxford Principal Ms. Tony White has accepted a position in the Menor City Schools. She has served Tiger Nation for the last 16 years, and we wish her the best in her next professional chapter. I'm pleased to announce that current Heights High Assistant Principal Ms. LaShawn Perry will be the new Oxford Elementary Principal beginning next school year. With her extensive experience as an elementary school teacher, school administrator, and a relationship builder, we are confident she will be a great fit for Oxford. And finally, we know that Dr. Lombardo will be leaving Tiger Nation in a few short weeks to become the superintendent of Geneva Area City Schools. I am so proud of Dr. Lombardo. And we will all miss him very, very much, and we know he'll do wonderful things as the leader of Geneva City. As we move forward and thinking about how to best align leadership with our strategic plan, I am extremely excited to announce that Mr. Sean Patton has been named the Chief of Human Resources and Operations for the district. He's currently our Human Resources and District Compliance Officer. He's been with us for 2 years and previously served as the Director of HR and Assistant Superintendent in Garfield City Schools. We look forward to seeing him do great things in this new leadership role. Congratulations. I see Sam Gifford here with us tonight, but I think we welcomed you before, so I think you're here for the work session, am I correct?
Yep, I'm here to listen to this presentation.
Wonderful.
Gentlemen, we're going to show them how it's short and sweet.
Yeah.
That's right. Get him on the right track.
Great seeing you again.
Thank you.
And with that, is there something else before we go to the work session?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, so I am now going to turn it over to Mr. Ryan Porter for an update on the severance development.
Thank you
for joining us.
Do you want to do their presentations first? I don't want to.
Let you do your thing.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I want people to be held up. All right. I'm going to share my screen or attempt to. PowerPoint. So that it's version. It seems to be working. No, that's not working. Hold on, let me try this one more time. Sure. I'm always up for help, yes. So if I go into here,
Oh, yeah, so
and I go to share,
click on Windows.
window. I know, but it's only gonna be. Now I can't get it into present mode.
Oh, and then
It's
go
down here.
to, where's it at? Right there.
Right here.
Okay. And then present, or
It's
where?
down here, but it's still showing that mode. We should have ironed these tech issues out before, but
You're not the first, and you certainly will not be the last.
what if I'm sorry, I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but let's give it one more college try here. What if I share my entire screen, maybe?
Yeah.
Let's try that. Now, let me see if I go to PowerPoint and hit
Here we would call it
present.
a college and career readiness try, wouldn't we?
Damn right we will. There we go.
There we go. I kind of did it myself, too. I'm very proud. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for having me this evening. Again, my name is Ryan Porter. I'm a managing partner at Impact Collective. I don't remember how long ago was it that we met. I guess it was at some point last year for the first time. So thank you for having me back. I wanted to give you all an update on our efforts to redevelop Severance Town Center and get some feedback, any questions that I can answer. Obviously, this isn't the last opportunity. There'll be many opportunities, and I'm happy to meet with people on a more one-on-one basis. Thank you, everybody in the audience. If you recall, and if you don't, our process is pretty standard as far as how we go through a revitalization, redevelopment of a site. Every community is very different, so the results of that process are always different. But the process itself, we've standardized to some extent, and a lot of the work that I've done over my career, my team has done over our careers over the last 17 years as a team, has been on actually revitalizing suburban downtowns. So this is kind of, we're picking up that model and dropping it on a failed mall, if you will. And so we're really excited to be here. Just to remind you, my relationship and what brought me here is my relationship with Director Zampf over at City Hall. He and I know each other from the East Coast. And so when we started this effort, I signed our agreement with Namdar, the property owner, back in June, July of last year. And basically, the structure gave me about a 20-month period to work on rezoning and re-entitling and setting up a new plan for development of the site, and actually getting into contract to develop some of these parcels in that 20-month period. So it's a short time frame, a lot to accomplish, but we're making great progress. We're about halfway through right now. And the first step of our process was to come up with what we call a recommended action plan. So we did our wrap over, say, the first 4 to 5 months of that effort, and then kind of refined that and presented that to the city. It's not a document that was adopted by any means, so there's no official action on the wrap, but what it did was it explained to the community and to the city leadership and everybody who's been involved what we've learned, right? The work we did. So what we learned from the community, what we've been hearing from the community, what we've learned about the market, right? So what is the demand for retail space and residential space and all these different things that we have consultants look at and we look at. So we did a lot of that work. We learned about things that are not fun and exciting, like the sewers, right? What's going on with the sewer collection system and where we might run into problems down the road with the sewers, right? So that's the process that we go through as our before we come up with a recommended action plan as to how we're going to take those next steps. So that wrap document, it went over a bunch of stuff. It's, a 50, 60-page document. It's published on the city's website. It's published on our website. Encourage you to take a quick gander at it. There'll be parts of it that'll be cool and parts of it that'll be kind of boring. But some of the things that I just mentioned, obviously learning about some of the sewer infrastructure issues, like, right off of Taylor Road, there's like a sewer collection system bottleneck that, at some point we're going to have to deal with, right? Because as we start to develop the site, the capacity of the sewer system right there has a limit to it, right? And once we reach that capacity, we have to have a plan in place up front when that happens as to how we're going to deal with that, right?
Sure.
So just as an example that. We did a housing study because we do believe that housing will drive a lot of this development, largely because we're trying to, what we heard from the community and what we researched in all the efforts that were done by Future Heights and all these different groups that have been talking about severance for years is that people, some people, not everybody, have been looking for kind of this walkable downtown-y type feel on the site. And we know that a lot of that will have to be driven by, you know, people living there to kind of support the retail space and the commercial space and the park systems and all the stuff that we hope to happen on the site in the future. You know, taking what, you know, was developed as a mall, which obviously malls are failing all over the country, right? And kind of looking at, you know, whether this could be a kind of a more walkable downtown area. And, you know, I'll tell you that I usually work in failed suburban downtown areas and try to help revitalize them. And the irony of like this country and the history of the mall system is that the malls and the strip centers of this country, in large part, tore a lot of the heart out of the downtowns across this country over a 40 to 50 year period, right? And the irony of that is that now malls seem to be failing across the country, right? And so can we bring something back that's a little different? And, you know, not just the residential component, but obviously the retail component. So you'll see, you can't read it, but the chart on your bottom left is, you know, we went through and looked at, okay, here are the folks in Cleveland Heights, and here's what they have demand-wise for retail space. And you can read this in detail on in the WRAP study, but as an example, food and beverage, or I'll give you a different example. Furniture, home furnishings, and electronics and appliance retailers, right? So the existing demand from Cleveland Heights residents for that type of retail space is about $15 million a year. The existing sales for that is $69 million a year, right? So that means there's $54 million in leakage going on, right? So we look at those numbers and we figure out, okay, if people are shopping for these types of things elsewhere, how can we capture some of that here, right? And if people are shopping for a lot more of that stuff here, you know, how do we keep that here, right? So we try to figure out what the demand is from the existing residents that are here today, and then what the demand would be from potential new residents if we do build residential on the site, and that gets us to like estimated numbers of how much retail space we think could be captured and supported on site, which our initial estimates were like somewhere in the 94,000 square feet of retail space, right? And we're trying to do this in a manner in which the retail space is smaller in scale, right, and more mom and pop in scale than larger big box retail, because obviously the Severance Mall site already had a lot of big box, right? We had a Walmart on there, we had all these other big stores on there that are not there anymore or failed or didn't work out. And there are various reasons as to why some of those things happen. Not all of them are the market, but that is a piece of it. So you know, we've been working towards what is the sales leakage, what is the demand for residential, what is the demand for retail space, and how do we kind of mix that in some sort of future development plan. We're also looking at public spaces and parks and all the type of demand that we need for that type of component of the project. Financing, so we've been working on a financing structure stuff. So we've been talking about the potential Ohio New Communities Authorities and setting one of those up, which they did at some of the other projects in the area. We've been looking at what are the other developers that are in the area or nationally that might want to get involved in this site. So remember, I act as like this master developer player in this whole equation, right? So I sit there and work with the community and the city and with the owner to set up this chessboard of what can be built here and the approvals and how things can go, right, with everybody. And then we bring in other development players and investors to play in the game that we've kind of set up, right? And build the components that we agree can be built, right? So that diversifies the risk so that you're not just dealing with one developer, right? We're dealing with multiple developers, and hopefully it expedites the development process too, right? Because you're not relying upon just one player and one investor. Right, so it's more of an open for business, hey, come in and get involved in our project, because we all have this vision, and we've shared this vision, and we're really excited about this vision, and we have a lot of community support for the vision. So, you know, I'm cheerleading it, and I'm setting up the land use policies and the tax policies so that people can come in and take advantage of what we've all worked on together. So we've been talking to other developers in the area, and we've been talking about different financing mechanisms. Our community engagement component of this, which we call crowdsourced placemaking, and the irony of it is, and I think I may have mentioned this last time, and I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but Future Heights, as an organization here, does crowdsourcing as part of their efforts. I've been doing crowdsourcing since 2009 as part of my efforts. And we actually expanded to call it crowdsourced placemaking. But basically, we're looking to get, it's not like your traditional development model where you like have a one-day charrette or a couple-day charrette, and like community members come in and they go in a big gym and everybody throws ideas against the wall, and then the developer kind of goes off and does whatever they have to do anyways.
Takes all the sticky notes off. And
Yeah, exactly. So we do it in a very iterative process, and we try to specify what the feedback that we're looking for from community members to be less about like how wide should the road be, right? And we like to leave that to designers, right? And what the sidewalk should look like and how the trees should be set up and those types of things. We're asking community members through our CSPM process, our crowdsourcing process, what uses do they need to see, right? What are the types of uses that they want to see in the future of Severance Town Center? And why do those uses matter to them, right? How did they live before? How do they live now? How do they want to live in the future? And how do we create uses that will satisfy the needs of the community and are also feasible, right? Because that's the big piece, right? It's great to wish for something, but if it's not financially feasible, then we're all kind of fooling ourselves, right? So this crowdsourcing process, we have a website. It's called SeverancetownCenter.com, pretty easy to remember, SeverancetownCenter.com. And we are encouraging everybody to join the website. I make people join, and I know that's a pain in the butt because people don't like to type their name in and their email address, but it's important for us to get people engaged in a meaningful manner, and then we ask people to post ideas for uses that they want to see on the site, like indoor farmers market, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. And then we ask community members to campaign for and get support from other community members for those uses and get likes for them. And the uses over time that rise to the top, we commit to doing feasibility analysis on to work with the community as to whether there's feasibility to that idea. What will it take to actually have an indoor farmers market? What are the rents that farmers markets can afford to pay? How does the vending work out, right? All the things that go into components of a project and a use that make it happen, right? And really make it happen. And it's not a process that we open up this website and we're like, okay, post your ideas by April and then we're closing the website down. No, it's gonna take 20 years to develop this site fully, right? This is a giant site, right? So when a building is built, that's not the end of this project, right? There's gonna be a lot of buildings built over a lot of years as we develop out this site. It took 30 years for the mall to fail, right? It is not going to get developed overnight, this site, right? So this crowdsourcing process should live and breathe with the development, right? It should adjust over time. Priorities should change over time. Markets will change over time. What works and what doesn't will change over time, right? So this is our ability to work together as a group, the community and the developer and the city, on how these ideas are going to move forward over time, right? We had done some initial concept planning. I don't even know if I showed this to you last time that I was here, but basically we consider the first giant phase of the project basically to be the entire, what is now on the screen, right-hand side, right, of the project, which is basically the east side. So where the Walmart and the movie theater closed, that area. So that, the parking lots on the north and south side and the Walmart itself will be the initial phases of this project. We call that our big phase one, right? But then there'll be mini phases of 1A, 1B, 1C within phase one. Because that site, that area in and of itself is 20 plus acres of land, right? So that in and of itself will take a long time. We've now kind of moved forward to come up with a conceptual plan for the entire site, right? Which is a mix of residential and retail and park systems, some commercial buildings. This is not what's going to get built, okay? This is a concept plan that talks about the areas and the direction in which we believe the site should be reasonably developed, right? The areas where we think a main street can be created. The areas where we think, structured parking will go over time. The areas where we think we can connect to other sites that we don't control, right? There are sites outside the circle that we don't have any ownership over, or the NAMDAR doesn't have any ownership over. For example, and I don't want to bring up like a controversial thing, and I don't even know if this is a controversial thing, but the Milliken site, as an example, right? That site is a school, as I understand it, school-owned site, right? That could be within the zoning boundaries that we work on. All of the zoning that we will put in place this year will be what's called an optional overlay zone. So this means that nobody has to use the zoning. You can sit with the zoning that you have, or you can opt into our new zoning that we create, right? So for every property owner in this area, NAMDAR's the bulk of it, right? They can opt in, or they can stay with what they have, right? But it gives an optionality and ideas and thoughts on how people can actually redevelop their sites, right? So like, obviously, you know, we don't have the time to kind of get into every nook and cranny of this plan. And again, this is not necessarily that what's going to be built, but this is, you know, a plan that gives us some guidelines to start writing our zoning code, because it starts to create a street network, right? And we can build the zoning off of a future street network, right? Like, we don't want this future area to just be one big ring road that goes around, right? So we're gonna be building bisecting streets that go through this to create walkability in this area, and different phases and different blocks of development that's gonna happen over time. How are the Walmart, at what point are the Walmart and the Regal gonna come down? At what point are some of the other failed areas of the mall gonna come down, right? So all that has to be thought through and phased, and work with the infrastructure and all the stuff that has to happen. So, you know, we can go through this in a lot more detail whenever you guys want, but there's a lot of people here and I have limited time. Sorry, this is in there also, but this kind of just shows you how there's like mini phases, like 1A and B within the phasing. This is kind of an example of the road network that's going on here, right? So instead of this being one just giant ring road that goes around, right? It's a series of roads and networks and blocks. You can see how these development blocks are created by the road network, right? That we can then build within. And like that center road right there, that kind of is thicker, and that would be kind of like a Main Street area, right? Which would have angled parking in the middle that could be shut down during festivals, and there'd be retail on either side with residential above that. Like, that's the feel we're going for, and you could see the triangle at the top of that is like, would be kind of like a square that sits in front of City Hall that exists today, right? So, you know, connecting the Civic, right, to the town center. That's the concept. And then you can see the big blank area to the left where we don't have a road going through is Home Depot. That's probably never gonna move. But that's that area right there. So just to give you kind of a where we're at. So we've created this concept site plan, which was after the ROP, the first big step. We've been analyzing some of the plan and some of the impacts and looking at it. We're like kind of in the middle of a stakeholder review right this moment, right? Where we're talking about some of these ideas. We'll go through some plan revisions over the next couple months, and then we're gonna start trying to draft, some of our zoning code, right? So we're gonna start working on the zoning code. We're gonna create maps for the zoning. We're gonna create our zoning text, our regulating plan. We're going to continue to work on mitigations for issues we find out, whether those issues be traffic or sewers or water or whatever they may be. I think a big component of this is that item to the left, which is tax abatements. There's no way any of this project will move forward without a structured tax abatement as part of the overall project. So I want the zoning to be tied to a tax abatement structure so that all the developers and investors that want to come work here know what they're getting up front. Right? Like, that's the goal. The goal is to create this predictable environment so that every single player who comes in to develop under this concept is not going through their own process and fighting their own battles, right? We're working on it, and we're setting up the rules of the road up front so everybody knows what they're walking into, right? And that's how we like to approach these things, and how we've approached them very successfully in a lot of communities, right? But this tax abatement issue is something that the school is going to be very obviously involved in, right? So, you know, that's something I need to get to the table with you all about as early as possible. Like, I don't want this to be a surprise. I want this to be something that we collaborate on that is based upon reality and numbers and real things, right? And we're probably going to agree to disagree on some stuff, and we're going to work through it. And that's what I'd like to do. So then eventually we'll finalize the code language. Then there'll be a process of actual legislative process for the city to adopt the code, right, which would include public hearing, and, either the code will be adopted or denied, but hopefully it's adopted after all this effort. And then my goal is to have the code adopted at the end of this year, beginning of next year, because I'm simultaneously working on financing and developers that are interested in the initial couple of buildings of this, because I have to get that lined up under my 20-month agreement with the owner of the property, right? And I don't think any of us want the property to stay the way it is, right? And the Namdar folks are not developers, right? So it's either gonna slog along the way it is and continue to degrade, or we're gonna work on getting something done. And I'm working my butt off on trying to get something done here. So, anyways, I think that was a ton of information. Hopefully it was succinct enough. Again, there's a lot more for us to work on together, and maybe we could have smaller sessions. I don't know, however you guys want to work on it, but I'll stop for now. And I don't know if this is a question forum, but
Yes.
I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. This is very, very informative. My first question to you is, what do you think the time frame will be between where we are now on your chutes and ladders diagram
Bring that back up.
to when we will get to the developed tax abatement plan section? Because obviously that's where the school district comes
Yeah.
into play.
Yeah.
And we may all have individual opinions about any of the previous steps,
Yes.
but that's not our job, right?
Understood,
So-
understood. Well, I want your opinions on the previous stuff as community members, and then I want obviously, your partnership on working on the stuff that's part of your job, so.
Right. Do you have an
to
idea
answer your
of when that
question,
might happen?
The sooner the better. So, I'd love to start, I don't know how this works, but maybe you guys can talk about it a little bit, but if there's a working group or how we do that, but I would like to at least start, over the next couple months, talking about my ideas. Forget about numbers for a second, just my ideas of structure, right? And timing and term of abatements and things like that, and what I think is needed, and then kind of start to work towards numbers when I have a little bit more reality check in what I'm visioning here and what we're all working on here. So, it'd be great to start having some of those meetings with you folks. I don't know if you guys meet over the summer or you'll work over the summer, and then kind of really take it seriously
We
in the
meet over
fall.
the summer.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You have to do that.
I just mentioned that we have 17 weeks left in the month of May,
Okay.
because we haven't finished the school year yet, and we're kind of like,
Yeah, no, I imagine.
so
Yeah.
after the 17 weeks that are left in the month of May,
Yeah.
Maybe we could
Summer
have
and
a
fall.
low-key,
Yeah.
relaxed session,
That'd be great.
over the summer sometime, and just have
Sure.
a conversation about what you're thinking.
Maybe July we can plan, sometime in July. I don't know whether that's good for you all, but.
Do we usually have a work session in July? I
We
think that's the
don't
month that we
typically, but
skip it
that is-
usually.
yes, Yeah.
We could do, I don't know.
And then I'm going to ask you also, Scott, where's the line where this should become an executive session versus an open meeting, and if that's an issue?
Right. And I guess that would.
'Cause we don't
depend
wanna
on
mess
the-
that one up.
Right, on the content of the conversation. So we would have to look at that, whether it would be an executive session with the board or whether it would be an open session, depending.
Can I suggest the next step? Yeah, maybe I can take on the obligation of coming back to you with an agenda,
Okay.
suggested agenda, and outline of what that meeting would entail. And then you can all opine upon whether that needs to be an executive session, or it can be a public session, or how many people need to be involved, and that kind of stuff. And we can target a couple months from now to have that meeting, so everybody can kind of digest. Does that make sense?
Yep,
Yeah.
Think so?
Okay. Great.
good, thank you.
I also just
Other
feel like
thoughts?
it's an interesting drawing, but in order to have those conversations in a meaningful way,
Yeah.
I'm gonna need to know, where are we, let's talk about what's occupying
Yeah, densities. Yeah.
Those buildings.
Yeah,
and retail
buildings.
versus residential, and
Sure.
how many bedrooms, and all that sort of
Yes,
stuff.
100%. Yeah. And listen, the beauty of the zoning code is that we can regulate what we want to regulate, right? So, we can focus on certain typologies of housing and certain densities of housing and certain number of bedrooms, like you're saying, right? So all that stuff is stuff that we can regulate in the code as part of this effort. I think the retail space and the commercial office space, if there is a market for that, frankly, and any light industrial, usually our codes are very flexible. We allow a lot of things, uses-wise, right? If you want to have like a mini empanada operation, in the building, we allow that, but you have to have a storefront up front and have it, formatted in a format where it's walkable, right? So there's not a giant parking lot in front of you. You're part of a bigger building, and you have maybe a small 15 or 20-foot deep storefront with your empanada operation behind it, right? I don't know why I came up with empanada. That was just random.
Because we're all hungry, that's why. We
yeah.
know that we're all hungry.
Taco Tuesday.
So we are very flexible in the uses, but we allow the market to drive what comes next. I know that residential will be a huge driver of this, in my opinion. Like, that's just my gut as to how it's gonna drive the heads and beds and who's gonna shop in the stores and, go to the restaurants and keep them open 7 days a week, right? That I feel confident about is gonna be a component of this, a big component of this. But what type of residential and the bedroom counts and all the stuff that, ultimately has pupil yields, right? And all these types of things. I'm used to having those conversations because frankly, in New York State, where I come from, we have to go through what's called the State Environmental Quality Review Act for each one of these efforts, these larger developments. And it is a very rigorous process of analysis of a lot of the impacts of these types of developments. You don't have that process formally here in Ohio, that I know of. But I want to talk about all those things because I don't want surprises. Like, that's the kind of stuff that stops development from happening, right? If we're upfront about these things and we talk about them and I give you what I believe to be the facts and we debate those things, it's better, right? Because I don't want to be in a position where we think we're all on the same page and then, 18 months from now, someone comes in to invest in the next building and they're like, what happened? We didn't want this, right? We want to be on the same page that we've set up these rules up front, right? And we know that this is how this is going to work. Obviously, we're not regulating every doorknob, right? But we're regulating the form of the buildings and the densities of things that can happen, right?
Well, and also are these these, for purchase or for rent,
Rent,
and
yep.
all of that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. I'm
Is-
trying to mix all of the above.
Yeah.
The demand for sale, attached and there's not likely to be a lot of detached here, but for attached and or in a condo building, the demand for that is obviously going to be. Well, I shouldn't say obvious. In my mind, and according to the residential study, will be less than the rental demand because it's just harder to sell things, right, than to rent things. But I think it has to be a mixed component, and it has to be a mix of affordability, and it has to be a mix of generational, right? So I want multi-generational, multi-affordability, both for rent and for sale, right? Different types of for sale, townhomes, condos, all of that stuff has to be mixed in the appropriate percentages. And I'd like to have as many of it going at one time with requirements for those buildings to have some formation of ground floor commercial and retail spaces, right? That's baked into the zoning code, right? And how that works and on what streets that makes sense versus where it doesn't make sense, right? So all that stuff I'm trying to regulate as part of the code. And again, we're not forcing it on anybody because it's optional. If you don't want to play as part of this, then you don't have to.
So as we talk about those analyses, we've had a great deal of development within the boundaries of our district over the past 5 years,
Yep.
6 years. A lot of apartment buildings going up, a lot of new apartments going up. And some of them burning down.
I was going to say that, but you said it.
But they will rise again.
Like the phoenix, yeah.
Yes. And so a question of mine, for instance, is, you know, when does the market just get saturated?
Sure.
And how do we know genuine demand and occupancy levels of, you know, of the new development that exists?
Yeah.
And are those numbers, are accurate numbers available? Because I really am skeptical about just how much interest there is in
Sure.
in apartments. I mean, you look at Severance Circle has two significant apartment buildings
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
And are they fully occupied?
99% is
Good.
my information. So,
Okay.
So look, the city commissioned a residential housing study as part of this whole process. It was done by Zimmerman Volk Associates, right? Highly regarded. You know, I can't convince you that their numbers are accurate. They are a professional firm that does this all over the country, right? I encourage you to look at their study. It looks at every project in this community, talks about the
Forward
occupancy.
that to us?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Sure, I will just send it to you.
Oh, we'd all be,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a really good study, and it really gets granular about every market class and type and affordability levels and who's who and why they would and mobility patterns and like, it's a good study, in my opinion, and
I
I
look
think you'll
forward to it.
appreciate it.
Great.
And it talks about how much demand there is per year, because it is not endless, you know? But there is a demand per year for a certain amount, right? And, you know, I think we all recognize that this area has been decreasing in population over the last 20 years plus, right? So, you know, I don't know that this is a solution or even people want a solution to that, frankly, right? But what I do know is that I do trust the work that they do, and I do trust that, like, without that work, I don't think people are writing big checks to build buildings that they don't think are gonna get occupied, whether they be retail spaces or residential spaces or office spaces or empanada factories, right? So, like, we have to do that work to make sure that people are confident to make that investment, right? And that investment and that project meets the goals and the needs of the community, right?
right.
So
That-
balancing
that's
those
where-
two.
That's where it has to end, is,
I also think about you mentioned, you know, the retail space, and the demand for that, because it seems that we have a lot, or, you know, it seems to me, you
Yeah.
know, it could just be anecdotal, that there are quite a few vacant retail spaces. And so do you think something like this would like attract, you know, people back into those storefronts that, you know, that you mentioned?
I don't know that it's gonna solve vacancies that exist in other Main
Areas,
Street
yeah.
areas, like Coventry or wherever else you may be thinking of, right? What I definitely don't wanna do is exacerbate those issues, right? So I wanna be thinking very strategically about what is missing in this community that may be in, I don't know, maybe you go to Ohio City for something that you really love that we could get here, right? Like, I don't want to be cannibalizing what exists. I want to be
Right.
complementing what exists. But I do very strongly believe that, like, having people that will go and shop at those places on Tuesday morning is really important, right? And it's just, I think there's this misconception, my opinion, in the world, in our country, that main streets can be supported effectively. A lot of main streets can't be, in my opinion, supported effectively just by the bedroom communities around them, right? Because, you know, everybody wants to go to the downtown area for dinner on a Friday night, right? But who's supporting that business on Wednesday afternoon for lunch, right? And businesses can't survive on your business for Friday night and Saturday. Like, that's just not reality, right? Because they have to pay rent and they have to pay employees, right? So, like, we have to create this environment that we know, and I'm still working towards that for every new resident, we can support X square feet of retail, right? Because we don't want to overdo that and then have vacancies. We also don't want to underdo that, right? So finding that balance it's a math equation and it's not precise, right? but it's something that we take very seriously about, analyzing, right? And thinking seriously about. And I was literally with a community member today for an hour and a half who was telling me that, like, we need a lot more retail here, which is the total opposite of what you just said, right? So like, you're right. It is anecdotal to your experiences,
Yeah.
right? And like, we need to get to the facts, right? And the facts of what the vacancy rates are around here and where they are and why they are. And like, I'm thinking about all that stuff. I'm not just kind of throwing it against the wall. But it's a good point, yeah.
It sounds to me a lot like sort of the vision of the Van Aken district,
Yeah.
with a complete redevelopment, reimagination of a site
Yeah.
and happening in phases. And over the years, there's been what I think you would call a sort of expected turnover. Some of the retail hit and some of it missed, and same with restaurants.
Yep.
But, there's giant, brand-new high-rise apartments that are, appear to be very popular and filling up, which is certainly promising.
Yeah, I was actually shocked when I went there the first time that they were able to build that building, by the way. Because, I mean, the
big
cost of
H.
construction, the cost of construction is not cheap for a building like that, right? Like, that's real. Once you go above 8, 12 stories, it's very expensive to build, right? So I don't believe that those types of heights are necessarily appropriate for Severance, frankly. It's just my opinion, right? I haven't heard anybody screaming for those types of heights either, right? Like, I look at it more like, so I live in Brooklyn, right? Where the scale is very different, right? So, but even the scale in my neighborhood is very different than the neighborhood right next to me and the neighborhood across the water from me, right? So, scale is really important from my perspective to creating a great place, right? And I feel like the scale of Severance, from what I've learned, is more of like a 3 to 5, 6-story frame type size, right? Like, not 20 stories, right? Like, that's the scale feeling that I get from the place, just for doing this for 20 years. I might not be right? But like, that's the conversations that we should be having. But to your point, yeah, Van Aken is, it's got us, I'm going there tomorrow with another architect that's local here for the 4th time that I've been there, right? Just to talk about things, like what's working, what's not working, what could be better, what could be, you know what I mean? So like, I want to learn from all these things that have happened, both their successes and the things that aren't all working.
Well, I really appreciate the work that you're doing, because it really does seem like you're out to solve the sort of chicken-egg problem of development. Like, people don't want to come in because there's nothing there, and people who have stores don't want to come in because there's no one shopping there. I mean, it looks like you're really out to crack this nut, which is great. I also want to thank you for bringing and opening up the conversation about tax abatements and TIFs and all that early. I mean,
Early and
so
often, yes.
early, which is incredible. The one thing I would say for me personally, as a single board member, is the sort of litmus test that I have around abatements and TIFs is sort of the what's the value proposition to the student and the family of the district that we serve.
Sure.
And so like, when we're talking about things like bedroom count, like that stuff really does matter. Could a family move in and, a family that's already in the district stay in the district by moving into one of these places? Would this attract a new family? And, amenities that matter to our families.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the sort of, not to be, what's in it for us, but
Oh, yeah.
what's
No,
in it
it's
for us?
absolutely what's in it for us. I mean, our
Yeah.
focus is our 5,000 kids, and it always has to remain that focus.
Cool.
And, if this attracts new residents who give us another 500 kids, that's fantastic, right? I mean,
Yeah, but it won't. I mean, 1 and 2 bedroom,
not 1 and 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
We know that.
Well, I'm not used to this.
Okay.
I am used to where I come from, where it's like, if you attract one more school kid, we're going to protest you, right? So, very different world that I live in.
Sure.
Where I am from. So, and every place is different, right? So, but I'm used to the suburbs of New York, where like, God forbid you build a 3-bedroom unit because.
Because
you're
they might
gonna-
have children.
They might have children, yes. And I'm constantly like debating with school boards and school districts about their aversity to children, right? Like, and serving children, right? So like.
Welcome to Tiger Nation, because
Yeah,
we're all about the
it's
kids,
a breath
right?
of fresh air. It's a breath of fresh air. But I also want to be realistic with you all about like, what is your capacities, right? Where are you? Where are you in your elementary schools? Where are you in your middle schools? Where are you in your high schools? What are your school capacities right now? What are your teaching capacities right now? What are your facilities capacity right now? Right? Like, we need to be thinking about those things long term, because if this is successful, it might bring hundreds of kids. I don't know, right? So, like, I just want to be prepared for that. So having that, learning from you all, what's going on in the district is super important, right? I mean, I've worked in places where we've literally gone in and like measured school buildings, you know what I mean? Like, that kind of thing, right? I don't know that we need to do that here, right? But like, I'm willing to get granular with you. I just am on a timeline, so we gotta work together,
Right.
that's all.
We are always happy to have new kids in our district.
Great to
We're
hear.
very proud of the work that we do, that our staff does, and we've got capacity.
That's great.
I will tell you this, that I'm also concerned about the fact that I'm worried about the community's, a rift coming in the community, that there will be people who are paying property taxes and people who are not. And I think that a community can absorb an amount of that
Sure,
and will accept an amount of that
yeah,
as a growing pain. But I think that, that there may be a point at which people in the community who are paying very high property taxes
yeah,
begin to really resent and push back on new development that is not subject to the same challenges. It is hard for Heights residents to pay their property tax bill.
yeah.
And it's a difficult thing to present to them to say, because they'll look at us and say, well, all these new people are not paying the same property taxes that I am.
Yeah.
And then you start to really balkanize your community. That's my real concern.
Well, I hope we don't balkanize, but I hear you.
Me too.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's very important that we begin a process of educating community members who are property taxpayers on what's the payoff for them.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm not talking about empty marketing. I want to be able to present a real vision of how this does help them.
Sure.
And if it doesn't, then that's going to be a real challenge for us to approve.
yeah, no, I understood, I understand, I think, it is not going to be a short-term economic windfall for the community, right? It's gonna be a long-term economic windfall for the community, right? Like, when you do these types of projects, right? The job creation, the economic development that comes from the retail space and all the stuff that happens around that, that sets in over like 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? And then eventually the tax abatements burn off, right, over time. And now you've got another 100 years, hopefully, of these people, of the full taxes there, right? So this is not a short-term bet. Like, I don't wanna like misconstrue that to anybody. This is a longer-term bet, right? Just like the mall was a longer-term bet, right? I believe this is a more sustainable long-term bet than a mall is, right? Because people always need to live somewhere, right? People don't need to go to a mall, right? So, and with the advent of online shopping, I think retail is, you know, slowly big, you know, brick and mortar is just gonna continue to get deteriorated, unfortunately, and it has to be experiential, brick and mortar, and it has to be a place that's special, right? Because if it's not special and you can get it online for cheaper, it's really hard to convince people not to do that,
And
right?
hot things stale quickly.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But I hear you. I hear you. We can talk about the economic benefits. I mean, we can run numbers on job creation and economic spending power and all that stuff, right? We have to make assumptions around how many people that are gonna move into this project over time and use this project over time are already here versus new people, right? We have to figure that out. But we can do that work. That's doable work.
I think that's gonna be important considerations as we talk about abatements.
You're talking about all the stuff that I normally have to do for my seeker studies. So we should just do the work, right, to
Great.
figure it
Yeah.
out. But
Wonderful.
all I ask is that people engage so that we can do it fast, because when I get to March of next year, I just need to be in a position where either I've gotten far enough that NAMDAR's like, okay, we'll give you more time, or I'm done, right? Because otherwise, I don't know what happens. I will tell you this. I'm the one at risk here. My time, my effort, my money, all the stuff I put in is the most at risk, because I truly do believe that we will make massive project progress on the land use and the zoning for this site. And even if I don't end up making my time frame, you guys will have a huge head start, or at least the community will, from where they were. I don't want to walk away with nothing, obviously, but I will tell you that I think that the community should be thinking like that at the end of the day, I think this will be progress, regardless. Yeah.
Fair enough.
This is wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
So if you can send us a prospective agenda,
Yep.
that will allow us to figure out how best to schedule the event. And then we'll just keep moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
And it could be split in a work session if noticed correctly, right? I mean, we could do.
We could have two parts.
Sure.
Yeah, we'd want David to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
And then, yes, if you could send me a link to that other
Sure.
study.
Yeah. I don't know who I send things to, but I've been
You can
emailing
send
with
it to me
Gabe.
and
There you go. All right, Gabe.
I'll send it
You
out.
get
Yeah,
the first
yeah. I'm a bridge builder.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
time. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Next up,
Next up.
Next guy.
Mr. Petcat.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it all right if I just stay here?
I don't know.
Or should I move?
George doesn't like to share.
This is gonna be the shortest presentation, I think, on record here.
really?
We're gonna be
Yes.
finished by
That's a big
7.
promise.
You can have a lot of questions,
He can
but I'm
make
just
it
saying the
so.
presentation. Mr. Gaynor and I like to be brief.
But thorough.
Absolutely.
We gonna wait for Liz or just?
Nope, she said go ahead and.
Yeah,
Go
keep
ahead.
going.
Yep.
Awesome.
Started here.
Perfect, so good evening. I first apologize that Mr. Daig and Mr. Newman were invited but couldn't attend for other reasons. But Mr. Gaynor and I will definitely take care of the program here. So tonight, we're going to meet about Goal 5, of course, ensure the district has necessary finances and infrastructure to meet its students' outcome goals. So we're going to discuss facilities, the district permanent improvement fund, the 10-year plan, a look ahead at planned projects, and the future of finances for facilities. So what I wanted to share at first, I know you all have this information, but again, to highlight the facilities that we have, the year they were built, the square footage that's there, and the acreage, and along with classrooms. Now, when you look at classrooms, that's general classrooms. There's probably more pigeonholed within the schools, but when someone asks me for a count, that's what I give them, okay? And it goes through district, even Milliken and Wiley and the Board of Ed are listed on there. Total square footage for the district is on there, and the total acreage that the grounds and maintain. So, the District Permanent Improvement Fund, the first one is the previous PI work. Now, that link is available on the board website. If you look under Business Services, that lists the projects, all the work that was done using permanent improvement funds since 1998 through 2025. So I try to keep that as current possible. Then a 10-year plan, that link is from the current year, goes out 10 years. And that changes constantly, so I share that with you weekly in the update. So you can look one week and then something may change. I added Delisle's entrance doors were just added on there recently. They had to be replaced. So again, I try to use as much permanent improvement money as I can instead of trying to go to Mr. Gainer saying, hey, I need
Everybody goes to
$15,000 for
Mr.
the
Gaynor.
entrance doors, right? And resources we use for that plan. So we discussed this previously, but the operations and maintenance staff are key in this. I mean, they're like the boots on the ground, they're in the buildings every day. So, things that they see, Monticello has door issues that have to be looked at. That type of information comes in. If we feel we can do it in-house, we work it. If not, then we'll engage either a consultant or architect, depending on how big the project is and how much information we need to go out and get quotes. So if it's something we feel we could just get a couple paving companies to give us something, and we'll do that. We'll take that approach. Work orders put in by the staff is also very helpful because that helps us get a lot of the work done. We do not use permanent improvement funds, though, for any type of work orders unless it's big, okay? Just so you're aware. And architects and consultants. So GPD is the firm that we've been using in the district for the past 6-7 years. They have been vetted through Ohio School Council, so it takes away the requirement to go out and bid RFPs out for architectural support. They've been involved in the district on every building. They're the ones that did the current pavement project that's going to take place this summer that I share with the board every week, so you see how we're spending that $2.1 million improving all the parking lots throughout the district. They have engineers, which we appreciate, because in the past, we had architects that were great, but then if you needed support from an engineering firm, you had to go get a separate engineering firm. So GPD brings all that to the table, and they're very helpful. And then Taylor Consulting, just a little history on Taylor Consulting. So Greg Taylor is the president of Taylor Consulting. He started as a roofer over, I think, 30 years ago, and he was on our roofs working for a period of time, and his family started a business, and he now, so this gentleman knows our roofs, and every year he's up there with Taj Dag, and will be Ricky Newman in the future, but he walks our roofs. So his plan is based on knowledge and historical knowledge. He's really helpful for that. So that's how we develop the 10-year plan. I don't know if you need to look at it now, but that's the information that we use to develop that. So we'll turn it over to Mr. Gaynor.
All right. So one of the things that we wanted to note in the presentation tonight is simply what is the permanent improvement levy? And I know we've talked about this in 3 things before, but just to kind of keep that in the front because, oftentimes your permanent improvement levy is confused with your general operating levy. So we wanted to make sure that people understand that permanent improvement levy is apart from that and is for specific uses. And it is also, so you're not seeing the permanent improvement levy within the 5-year forecast or any of those kinds of documents you're looking at. As a reminder, the permanent improvement levy was 3.8 voted mills, and that was passed in November of 2002, continuous. Prior to that, it was on a 5-year cycle. So it was finally in 2002 when the district decided to make that a continuous levy and put that on the ballot in that way. Again, the permanent improvement levy is restricted use levy only for capital-related projects and expenses. 3.6 million annually, roughly, that can fluctuate based on what collections are, that kind of thing, but 3.6 million annually for the district, and you see $586,400 annually also dedicated to COPS repayments. So COPS are those certificates of participation. That was the debt that went alongside the high school bond issue.
Scott, is that why it shows a beginning balance of not 3.6 million, but instead 3.08?
In terms of what's available,
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
Correct, yeah, because what we do is give George an estimate to say you have this much to begin with in terms of projected budget, less those COPS repayments, so.
How many years have we been repaying the high school debt?
I think we initially, let's see. 21 is when we refinanced
Finance, right.
what the original COPS were. So that original project happened in
Might be 14.
13.
Yeah, 13, 14. We
Yeah,
did
voters
football field.
authorized, the $134.8 million in November 13, and then the bonds were actually issued in 2014.
What was
Okay,
the
so we're
term?
10 years into repaying that debt, and it was a
30
30-year
The year.
bond, okay.
Correct.
And at what point do we get more bond space, Scott?
You're getting ahead of me, Phil. Spoiler.
You know how we think.
Yeah.
Well, and so that, I think, is probably going to be the one thing, because as George mentioned, a lot of this data you've seen before, although this is really for the community to see and be a reminder of, but I think some of the new information is what you're going to see here next. So Kathy Petrie, you'll remember, was our bond counsel for many years, Squire Patton Boggs. And so I recently, in preparation for this presentation, reached out to her successor, Mike Sharb, also at Squire Patton, and said, can you update this 2017 memo from Kathy, telling us about debt capacity? So I have that available for the board in detail that I can provide you, but these are kind of the highlights of what has happened there. So you'll see that districts have a debt limit of 9% of their tax valuation. Now, although we're not necessarily, it's causing us problems, that this massive property tax revaluation that just happened, that, was the highest since, the 70s. In some ways, that's problematic, in particular in terms of the school funding formula and how, local capacity versus the state share and all that good stuff. But what it does is it's now increase the property valuation to 1.7 billion. So you'll remember, we always used to say back in the day, 1 mil would bring us about $1 million. Well, now 1 mil brings us about $1.7 million based on this new valuation. So in terms of levy calculations down the road, new levies, that makes the millage needed smaller because a mill is now bringing us more
Right.
money.
But at the same time, taxpayers are feeling every dime.
Oh, indeed.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And as a result of these property, revaluation, because although House Bill 920 prevents us from getting more money, we do get a little bit of inside millage, but, as we've discussed also in three things, other entities that are not subject to House Bill 920, as those property values have gone up, so has the, tax bill for our homeowners. So, the city gets some property taxes, the county, the library, all these entities,
Metro parks.
are getting more property taxes. But again, so for us, though, our total current valuation has increased to 1.7 billion. And so that makes our 9% debt limit $153 million. Current debt outstanding is 129, so there is actually capacity now, whereas it was not projected that we
We
would
didn't
have
have
any
any
for many.
capacity 2 years ago.
Correct, and
Right.
wouldn't for some time. So this increased valuation has allowed for another $23 million in debt. Now, that's not to say you necessarily want
Max out
to
our
issue
credit card.
debt for that.
The problem is
Go
23
shopping.
million only does one elementary school's air conditioning.
elementary.
That's one,
Right.
and we got several.
Well, and what I'll say
But-
too about that is, and this is one of the things that I want to talk about in three things for June. So the Auditor of State has now created these indicators, financial health indicators, they're calling them. And it's like 17 different measures of the financial health of school districts. And we are, so it's a red, yellow, green kind of a system. We are green in every area but debt. And so that, and it's being, driven in large part because, as you can see from those last two bullets, we actually did exceed our debt capacity because we were in the expedited local partnership
Yeah.
with OFCC. And if you do that process, that does allow you to exceed your debt capacity of 9% of your valuation. So we did that.
But we never got any money from OFC.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
just
yeah, that's correct.
checking. Yeah. I keep waiting, right?
We should
In
invoice-
5 years,
we
we'll
should
be
totally
on the
invoice them.
list. In another 5 years, we'll be
right.
on the list, yeah.
Yeah, 30.
Well, I mean, and I don't care about, first of all, the community approved the debt,
Yes.
Absolutely.
It was voted on.
yeah.
And we refinanced all of
Right.
it. So, when the rates, when the rates happened, this was, as we said back in, 21, we did refinance all of the debt, including the COPS, so that we would have interest savings.
It was really helpful.
And it was significant.
Yes.
Yeah, oh,
And
I
so,
remember,
yeah.
that was one of your shiniest moments.
That's why you don't want to go into
I
debt
mean-
anymore, because what you're going to reduce is your permanent improvement, which is
Yeah, no, I'm-
needed
Yeah.
for future
I am
work.
I have no interest in taking this community in debt. This is, no.
But the point being, I know that question does come up a lot, like, have we exceeded our debt capacity? And the answer right now is no. There is $23 million available if, the district would choose to do something like that. And Mike also wanted to point out that those COPS, those certificates of participation that we used, to supplement the bond issue, the prior, the go-around, that there's always an option to issue that kind of debt as well. That's kind of outside of the debt limit. It's specialized, but for facilities kinds of projects, you can do that, if that's something that is necessary to do at any point.
But it's how to repay that.
Right, it's just a
Right.
repayment of it.
Right.
Can I,
You know.
can I ask a question?
Sure.
And maybe make a Jim Posh-ish request?
Absolutely.
So I love the 10-year plan. I think that it's easy to read. So when we see that we're finishing this year, about $381,000 in the red, which is not a problem because we can just take it from what we know is coming next year. Just, I think from a usability perspective, it would be great because we start the year with $3,088,000. I'd love to see that $381,000 as the first item to come off.
The interesting,
You've got a reason why.
this is already paid, the interesting is that those projects that you see there are 25, 26, meaning if they start July 1st, they're already paid for. I know it's confusing, but the money.
I
the mon-
believe you, I just want to understand.
The money that we had from, left over from the middle schools we had,
Oh, right.
right? So I've been
okay.
slowly integrating that into
Got it.
the needs of the district.
Okay.
Okay,
So
Yes,
we're
now I
fortunate
remember.
that typically, looking at that, you're correct. We would say, holy cow, July 1st, the money that we need, we don't have enough.
right.
We have enough actually to pay for the following year's projects.
Great. That's,
I know it's a
Pretty-
mess.
no, it's
But-
not. That's why, I just wanted to.
That's why I show the negatives,
Right.
just to show the current year, but we're actually ahead. So, I mean, I could change the dates up top if it'd make it easier for you to sort of capture it, but
As long as he understands.
he's gonna understand it. By the time he steps in, he'll understand it. So there's money, yeah, definitely next year. If you
Okay.
look at the minimum amount, I can't remember what I captured for following year, but there's like $1 million some odd dollars available.
Yeah. I also really appreciate, in this forecast, I really love that you point out, that we've got Oxford roof repairs due to wind damage, same with rocks, and you mention right there that insurance is paying
Portion of it,
a portion of it.
correct. So the amount that you see there is the amount that the district had to put in. There's additional cost to it that
Right.
we had to go out for bid.
And I think the same thing happened to Canterbury.
Yeah,
Yes,
there was wind
previous-
damage
yep,
there as
Right.
well.
Previous year, there were 4 roofs.
Yeah, and so I'm just really, thank you for making sure to include that in the actual report, because I think that the people who do periodically look at these things,
Right.
it's important for them.
Now,
to
now, that is not available on the district website. That
No, this
I-
is in our weekly.
It's in your
yeah.
weekly. I
Right.
don't know if you
Summary,
looked
yeah.
at the second link, that second link on the bottom there, not in the link, but the second page of that document also shows, Taylor Consulting took the time to forecast out beyond the 10 years. You'll see the roofs listed there and the projection, when they would fall in again, and the projected cost. And then I also listed Wiley roofs that,
Yeah.
and Milliken that are not in the current plan.
The Roxborough outdoor bleachers,
That's being done right now.
that's great.
It was a safety hazard,
Yeah,
so
oh
I
yeah,
had
no,
to.
they were
right.
cool bleachers, but it was a little bit like being.
I think you'll like
being
the
on
new
set
ones.
of A League of Their Own.
Yeah.
ADA accessible, I had to,
Fantastic.
Oh, nice.
I had to put
You
down
wouldn't
a
look
big
cool
concrete
falling through
pad.
them.
No,
Yeah, no.
no, but they're neat.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
And I'll just say I appreciate the fact that, George has always, Sam, no, George has always really, like, we've not had to advance money from the general fund. But based on the timing of the projects, if that's necessary, we do have the funds available from the general fund to do an advance, at the end of the fiscal year, and then we return the advance.
And then you
immediately
clean it
to do
up at
that.
the end.
So, we do that with some federal funds and with some grants. And back in the day, pre-George, there was a lot of that
Going
happening
ahead.
where there was,
yeah.
a lot of borrowing ahead for projects.
Right.
And so, George has really done a great job of, kind of, we've taken the money that we could get from the refinancing and anything else, and really done a good job of really kind of taking the overages, the refinancing proceeds, so that the debt was less to have to repay, and use that funds to work within the money we have.
Well, I appreciate Mr. Garrett saying that, but I also know my response if I walked in and said I need an advance would be no, and then heck.
Not.
Yeah, we know how that conversation
You know
goes.
that, right?
We've got 800,000, a quote for 800,000 for the high school field in 26, 27.
And that actually needs to happen this fall.
That's where I was
And
going.
it's great because Mott's is the company, they've been vetted through House School Council also. So they've been through the pricing, we just don't have to go out for bid on it.
The fall, so
This
Yeah,
fall,
as soon as-
I know,
where's,
Where are they
gonna
gonna play football?
Yeah.
that's a Joe Diamato question, I just get the information from the athletic director saying this is what he wants.
Are you passing the buck?
It's after the
Okay.
season, yes, and they said they can, because what we're doing is, we're just taking the turf up, they'll replenish whatever sand base that has to be done, and then put new turf down. Actually, the design, I'll have to share that with you, it's pretty cool.
Who's the vendor or contractor who's doing the city, Dennison?
Dennison.
Soccer
I
field?
don't know.
Because that's happening
That's
this fall
actually,
too.
that's
That-
happening right now,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
yeah, they're tearing it up.
Yeah. Or be ready for fall, I should say, yeah.
Yeah, there's
Soccer
a,
season.
sometimes you have to do a bigger job underneath
Right.
than other times. There's no mention in this for the track, which I think is gonna be done a year later.
That's
Or-
his
or it's-
hope, and
Part of
that'll
it,
be,
right.
that'll be discussion you'll have to have with Sam to
Okay.
incorporate that in
All
there.
right.
It would be wise to do it right now, but it's just not there.
Right. Well,
Cost-wise.
and there's a benefit too, to spreading it out over 2 cycles.
Right.
But I'm wondering, is there anything that needs to be coordinated, once you've got the turf off, if you gotta run new lines, et cetera, might that be the time to do it?
New lines
New
for-
water lines, new.
Oh, no, we don't
whatever.
have to do any of that.
Okay, good.
comms, no.
Yeah,
All
that's,
the current water, it's minimal there.
Yeah,
They want
okay.
it to be affected.
well, you don't have to water turf.
No, but they do use water in a snack.
Right, well, they run, right, they have
Right,
they fill their bottles and
yeah, that's great.
containers, yeah.
George, I'm going to ask you what's probably a dumb question, but it's one of the last ones I get to ask you, so I'm going to let it rip. With the.
On 12 days, you can get me
Yeah.
anytime in there.
Counting, but you're not counting.
With the electrical service to the elementary schools specifically, because that's been I know a big thing that's come up around air conditioning and all that. I mean, those buildings, many of them were built in the 20s. They're, they were made, for a couple of light bulbs, not for.
They have 40 amps
Yeah,
total to the
yeah,
building.
exactly.
right,
Yeah, it's like one breaker, yeah. Is there any use or worth in going down the path of looking into like solar and batteries as that technology gets better and there's still some government money out
I
there
don't think
for
it's
it?
there for, you're to power air conditioning.
You'd need.
Or for,
Oh,
you'd need a
geez.
farm.
I don't think that
Yeah.
you would need, yeah, I don't think they're there yet.
yeah,
For
or
that.
to offload for, yeah, I guess, yeah.
And also.
6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Yeah, and remember E-rate, speaking of which, there's real threats to the E-rate,
It's
which,
about to go away.
yeah.
I read something about that in the paper, yeah.
When
That's
you
true.
get to that point, I mean, it's not just, you have the whole building, our current, like Roxelle, I mean, as you go
Right.
building by building from 1920s, the whole building has to be basically rewired.
Wired, yeah,
It's not gonna be easy either in those walls.
right.
Or it has to be all done surface mount, blah,
I
blah,
mean,
blah.
it
That's
just
ugly.
uglies
Yeah.
it up,
Yeah,
right? I
right.
mean, we have some great looking
Chunky.
schools, it'd be a shame to,
Start
that
running
too.
ugly conduit all over the
Right.
place, yeah.
or window air conditioners sticking out. I mean, that could be done, but you still don't have enough power in the
Right.
classrooms
Yeah.
to do window air conditioners.
Hence, the debt capacity of $23 million gets us one building, which is not enough, right? Because that's not a conversation you want to have at the grocery store.
No.
Why didn't you put air conditioning in my building?
Right.
Right? So,
This is great. I really appreciate this. These are important conversations for us to have, important conversations for,
I'm gonna tell you, just my brief conversation with Mr. Gifford, you are getting an awesome person taken over here, and it's gonna be good for the district. You'll be happy.
great. Well, we look forward to working with you. A lot. All right.
Big shoes to fill. Between these two, there's not a nickel in any couch cushions in the entire district. I mean, they.
That's right.
Yeah. I checked. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
All right.
That's it? We're done?
Well, thank you for this
Thank you.
wonderful, very helpful information. This is definitely one to bookmark so people can understand when they have questions about facilities and levies and funding. So we really appreciate it, and I took notes too, just to make sure that I'm able to talk about this, with
You
some.
can call us anytime.
Oh, and I certainly will be, so you know.
And we will.
I'm not changing my number yet.
From the,
I'll
yeah,
think
we'll be on
about
the
it.
beach
We'll-
maybe,
we'll-
but
yeah.
it's okay.
And thank you very much for the.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
time. Appreciate it.
Nice.
they're nice. I want a retire jacket.
You have to retire first.
You gotta earn it.
Show me the door.
Right.
That's not the same thing.
I don't know, feels like it.
Is there anything else, or are we ready for an adjournment?
I'm ready to adjourn.
Give me a motion.
I motion we adjourn.
Thank you.
I second.
Mr. Gaynor?
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Trimble.
Yes.
Ms. Crenshaw,
Yes.
Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.